You enter the world with a specific intention, a desire for a vacuum. That is what peaceful mode offers, theoretically. It is a contract you sign with the generation engine. You will not be hunted, you will not starve, and in return, you will be alone. I am narrating this not as a story, but as a documentation of a breach in that contract. I need you to understand the baseline before you can understand the deviation. The seed was random, or I thought it was. A standard long integer string that the Java environment processes into biomes, elevations, and entity spawn rates. I spawned in a spruce taiga, the fog thick and blue-gray, rendering the distant chunks as vague silhouettes. There is a unique acoustic profile to a peaceful world. Without the groans of zombies or the rattling of skeleton bones, the ambient soundscape takes the foreground. You become hyper-aware of the wind, the rain, the footstep sounds, dirt, grass, stone, wood. I started, as one always does, by punching a tree. The pop of the log breaking was the only violent sound in the simulation. I built a shelter, not out of necessity, but out of habit. In survival, a house is a bunker. In peaceful, a house is purely aesthetic. It is a statement of occupancy. I cleared a flat area near a frozen river and began to lay the foundation for a library. I wanted to archive the world, to map every chunk within a 2,000 block radius. That was the goal, to observe, to catalog. The first 10 hours were exactly what I wanted. Monotonous, meditative. I strip mined for resources, digging a 2x2 tunnel at Y level 54. The deep slate is tougher than stone. It takes longer to break, stretching the time between auditory inputs. It creates a trance state. You hold the left mouse button, you move forward, you place a torch. Repeat. The rhythm is hypnotic. It was during this trance that I first noticed the discrepancy in the chunk updates. I was placing torches on the left wall, always the left, so I could find my way, back by keeping them on the right. I ran out of torches and opened my inventory to craft more. When I closed the inventory, the torch I had just placed was gone, not broken. Gone. The light level had dropped to 0. I thought it was a client-side desync, a ghost block. That happens in Java Edition. The server and the client disagree on the state of a block, and the client corrects itself. I placed another one. It stayed. I didn't think much of it then, but as I continued mining, the atmosphere shifted. You know the cave sounds? The ambience that plays when the game detects a dark area nearby? They are triggered by a mood algorithm. The game calculates how long you've been in the dark and plays a sound file. I heard Cave 14.og. It's the one that sounds like a low, rhythmic throbbing, almost like a machine or a heartbeat, slowed down by 300%. It played 3 times in 10 minutes. That shouldn't happen. The cooldown on ambience is supposed to be longer. Stopped mining and stood in the dark, listening. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It felt heavy, like the silence of a room after someone has stopped speaking abruptly. I turned up my render distance, pushing the fog back. Down that long, straight tunnel, at the very edge of the render limit, I saw a single pixel of white. It flashed for 1 tick, 1/20th of a second, and then vanished. It could have been a lighting glitch. It could have been a particle effect from a dripping water block, but it felt like an eye. I returned to the surface. It was night. In peaceful, the night is just a cosmetic filter. The moon rises, the light level drops, but the threat level remains 0. I went to bed. The screen faded to black. The text "Sweet Dreams" appeared and the sun rose. Routine. I walked out of my house to check the sugarcane farm. That's when I saw the trees. The forest to the east of my base was a dense spruce thicket. I had not touched it. I wanted to keep the view pristine. But as I looked out over the river, I noticed a patch of gray against the green. I walked closer. A cluster of 4 trees had been stripped. Not stripped logs, stripped of leaves. The wood was intact, standing like bare pillars, but the foliage was entirely deleted. I checked the ground for saplings. If the leaves had decayed naturally, there would be saplings and sticks despawning on the grass. There was nothing. The leaves hadn't decayed. They had been removed. Or worse, they had never generated. But I knew they had. I had seen them yesterday. I walked around the perimeter of the leafless zone. It was a perfect square, a chunk, a 16 by 16 area where the spruce leaves ID had been replaced with air. I opened the F3 debug screen. I wanted to check the biome data, see if the game had corrupted the chunk header. Biome, taiga. Local difficulty, 0.00. Day, 14. Everything looked normal, but as I stared at the debug text, I noticed the entity counter. E, 001, 1 entity rendered. I looked around. There were no sheep, no cows, no dropped items. I was the only thing here. So E should be 00 or 101 if it counts the player. I spun in a circle, trying to find the source of the entity count. The counter flickered. E, 02, then E, 00. Something was moving in and out of the render frustum, something that the game recognized as an entity but couldn't render. I went back to the leafless trees. I placed a sign. Chunk error, day 14. I wanted to mark it, to see if it spread. I spent the next few in-game days focusing on the library. I needed leather for books, which meant I needed cows. But I couldn't find any. I had seen herds of them when I spawned. Now, the plains were empty. I walked for thousands of blocks. Pigs, sheep, chickens, gone. The passive mobs were despawning. That's not a mechanic in Peaceful. Passive mobs are persistent. They don't despawn unless they are killed or the chunk data is corrupted. I found a village about 1,000 blocks north. A plains village, sprawling and tiered. I ran toward it, relieved. Even the testificate sound would be welcome. I crested the hill and looked down. The village was silent. No iron golem patrolling. No farmers tending the crops. The doors were all wrong. Some were missing. Some were placed sideways. I walked into the blacksmith's house. The chest was there. I opened it. 3 obsidian blocks, an iron helmet, and a golden apple. I took the apple. I needed the reassurance of the inventory item. I walked out to the town square. In the center, where the bell should be, there was a hole. A 1x1 shaft going straight down. I looked down. It was pitch black. I dropped a torch. It fell for a long time. It didn't hit water. It hit stone. I realized then that this wasn't a generation bug. Generation bugs are random. They create noise. This was precise. A hole dug straight down in the center of a village is a decision. I built a pillar of dirt and looked around. The sun was setting again. And on the horizon, silhouetted against the square sun, I saw a shape that froze my blood. A pyramid. Not a desert temple. This was in the middle of a grassy plain, a perfect pyramid of cobblestone. Small, maybe 4 blocks high. I ran to it. I broke the center block. Nothing underneath, just dirt. It was a marker, a cairn. I looked back at the village. From this distance, the windows of the houses looked like dark eyes. I felt exposed. I felt the solitude paradox. The crushing weight of being alone combined with the terrified certainty that I wasn't. I ran back to my base. I didn't stop to sleep. I ran through the night. The moon was high and bright. I reached my library. I went inside and locked the iron door. I stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by empty bookshelves. I opened the chat. I don't know why. It's single player, but I typed, "Is there anyone here?" The text hovered on the screen. I waited. The console didn't reply. Of course it didn't. But then a sound played. Disc 11. I didn't have a jukebox. I didn't have the disc. But the sound of static, of heavy breathing, of someone running across stone, filled the room. It wasn't coming from a specific direction. It was global audio. Inside my head. I huddled in the corner, holding my sword. Why was I holding a sword? It's peaceful mode. I can't be hurt. The disc ended abruptly with that sharp, cutting static stop. Then the chat log updated. Not a message, just a system notification. Your game mode has been updated to survival mode. I checked the menu. The difficulty was locked. The button was grayed out. Difficulty. Hard. I watched my hunger bar. It twitched. 1/2 shank of hunger vanished. The contract was broken. The fear of Herobrine, or whatever this entity represents, is not the fear of a monster face. It is the fear of agency in a system that should be automated. When the hunger bar dropped, the game shifted genres. I was no longer a tourist. I was a survivor. But surviving against what? I had no food. I had relied on the peaceful mechanic of saturation retention. I scrambled to my chests. I had some rotten flesh from a dungeon chest I'd looted days ago, back when I thought it was useless trash. I ate it. The hunger bar refilled, but the nausea effect kicked in. The screen warped and twisted green. Through the distortion, I saw the wall of my library change. A block of oak planks vanished, then another. Someone was mining through my wall. I backed away, shield raised. The hole opened up. Nothing came through. Just the darkness of the night outside. I walked to the hole. I looked out. There was a sign placed on the grass outside my window. I jumped out to read it. It was blank. But as I looked at it, the text appeared, letter by letter, typing itself in real time. NULL. I broke the sign. I didn't want it existing in my world. I patched the wall with dirt. It looked ugly, a brown scar on the wood. I had to find diamonds. It was a compulsion. If I had full diamond armor, maybe the fear would go away. I went back into the cave system near my base. I found a vein of redstone ore. I mined it. As the ore broke, it lit up, shedding that momentary red light. And in that light, I saw a tunnel continue. It wasn't a natural cave. It was a strip mine. But it wasn't mine. The torches were on the floor. Redstone torches. I followed them. I walked for 10 minutes. The tunnel didn't turn. It didn't branch. It just went Z+. I checked my coordinates. Z 500, Z 600, Z 700. Suddenly, the torches stopped. The tunnel ended in a wall of obsidian, a nether portal frame, but it was filled with water, not portal swirls. A water portal. I touched the water. I began to drown. The bubbles appeared. I tried to back out. An invisible block blocked me. I was stuck in the water block. My air ran out. The damage ticked, and then, through the water on the other side of the obsidian frame, I saw the nether. But it wasn't red. It was blue. The blue nether. A rumor from the beta days. A lighting glitch in the dimension code. And floating in the blue fog was a ghast. But it had the Steve face. It screamed. It wasn't a ghast scream. It was a distorted audio clip of someone saying, "He is coming." The block holding me broke. I fell onto the obsidian. I was gasping for air. I looked at the portal again. It was empty. Just obsidian and air. The water was gone. The blue nether was gone. But in my inventory, I had a new item. A ghast tear. Lore text. Tears of the Null. I threw it into lava. I didn't want it. I needed to leave. This location was compromised. I packed my essentials, the diamond pickaxe, the iron armor, the few torches I had left, and the map. I headed toward the ocean. If the land was corrupted, maybe the water was safe. I crafted a boat and set sail into the deep blue. The ocean is a liminal space in Minecraft, just a flat surface of blue texture. The music kicked in. Wet hands. The gentle, melancholy piano notes felt mocking. I sailed for hours. The coordinates on the F3 screen climbed. X, 10,000. X, 15,000 Rs. I found an island, a small sandbar island, but it wasn't natural. It was perfectly square, and in the center of it was a tunnel, a 2x2 tunnel. I beached the boat. I stood before the tunnel. It went straight down at a 45-degree angle, a staircase. I shouldn't have gone in. Every instinct said to turn around, but the curiosity, the need to know the extent of the corruption pulled me in. I placed a torch. The walls were smooth sandstone, not generated, placed. I walked down. The tunnel was lit, not by torches, by redstone torches. They lined the walls, casting that dim, ominous red glow. The hissing sound of the redstone particles was a constant, insect-like buzz. I reached the bottom. It opened into a room. A replica of my first house. The one I built on my first world 5 years ago. The dirt hut. The cobblestone floor. The single chest in the corner. How did it know? How could the seed generate a memory? I walked into the room. There was a painting on the wall. The Skull and Roses painting. But the texture was glitched. The skull was real. It was the Steve Skin's head, stripped of skin. A raw, pixelated skull. I opened the chest. Inside was a book. Title, Null. Author, unknown. I opened the book. The pages were filled with gibberish. Unicode characters, corrupted text. But on the last page, there was a single sentence in clear English. I cannot sleep when you are near. I heard a sound behind me. The sound of a block being placed. Thud. I spun around. The exit was sealed with bedrock. I was trapped. I ran to the wall. I tried to mine it. You can't mine bedrock. I was buried alive in a memory of my own creation. I panicked. I started mining the walls of the room. Sandstone, easy to break. I broke through the wall and fell. The room was floating in a void. I fell out of the world, out of the world, out of the world. But I didn't die. I stopped falling at Y. 100. I was floating in the darkness. No stars, no sun, just the void. And then lights appeared. Torches. Thousands of them. They ignited in a sequence, creating a massive grid in the darkness below me. They spelled out a word. No, a coordinate. X, 23,000 hours. Z, 1,200. Then the game crashed. I sat there for an hour, afraid to reopen the launcher. I told myself it was a mod, a prank. Maybe I downloaded a corrupted version of Optifine. I checked the jar file. It was clean. I went into the saves folder. I looked for the world folder. It was there. Name, Peaceful Paradox. Size, 4.2 GB. That size is impossible. I hadn't generated enough chunks to fill 4 gigabytes. A world that size represents millions of blocks explored. I opened the folder. The level.dat file was missing. Instead, there was a file named null.dat and a text file named him.ttx. I opened the text file. It was a log file, a transcript of my movement. Player moved to chunk 4, 5. Player, place torch. Player observed the pyramid. Player felt fear. The game cannot track emotions. It tracks coordinates, health, inventory. It does not track fear. Unless fear is a variable in this version. I copied the save file. I had to know. I relaunched the game. The world was there in the menu, but the thumbnail was gone, just a gray static square. The world name was glitching. The text characters were cycling rapidly. I clicked play. It didn't load the terrain. It loaded me directly into the location from the torch grid. I spawned in a forest, but it wasn't the forest I knew. The trees were wrong. The canopy was solid wood. The trunks were made of leaves. The block IDs were swapped. The sky was purple. The texture for the skybox was missing, defaulting to the debug color. I walked forward. The terrain generation began to break down. I saw them ahead of me. The monoliths. These are legendary artifacts of the Alpha Generation engine. Massive, flat walls of stone with water, cheese holed through them. They shouldn't exist in modern Minecraft. They were patched out years ago. But here they were, looming over the corrupted forest like skyscrapers. I climbed one. The view from the top was a glitchscape. The chunks to the north were missing entirely, revealing the void. The chunks to the south were repeating. The same hill, the same tree, repeated infinitely into the fog. I heard the sound again. Cave 14.org, but louder, distorted, and then the footsteps. Crunch, 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 on gravel. I looked down for the monolith. A figure was walking through the repeating hills. Blue shirt, cyan pants, no armor. It was walking with a purpose, not the random wandering of a mob. It was pathfinding. It was heading toward me. I crouched. I hid behind a block of stone. The figure stopped. It looked straight up at me. The eyes were white, pure, flat white. No shading, no pupils. It didn't have a name tag. It started to float. Not fly. Float. Rising steadily into the air. Without an animation. I ran. I sprinted along the top of the monolith. My hunger bar drained instantly. I started taking damage. The old damage sound. The alpha sound. I wasn't being hit. The environment was hurting me. The air was hurting me. I reached the edge of the monolith. A drop of 200 blocks. I looked back. Herobrine was right behind me. He wasn't attacking. He was just standing there. Observation. He is the observer. The glitch that watches back. I jumped. I'd rather die to fall damaged than let him touch me. I fell. The wind rushed past. I hit the ground. I didn't die. I landed on a single block of water, a classic MLG water bucket clutch. But I didn't place it. He placed it. He saved me. Why? The chat message appeared. Not yet. I was teleported. Instant transmission. No loading screen. I was in a hallway. Bedrock walls. Sea lanterns in the ceiling. It looked like a server hub. A lobby. But it was empty. Signs lined the walls. I read them as I walked. Attempt 404. Subject shows resistance. Fear response adequate. Preparing for deletion. Deletion? I reached the end of the hall. There was a lectern with a book. I opened it. It contained a text string. Assets, Minecraft, sounds, ambient, cave, cave14.ai. I tabbed out. I opened the game files. I extracted the sound file. I opened it in an audio editor and switched to spectrogram view. You know the myths. The creeper face hidden in the audio. I looked at the spectrogram. It wasn't a creeper face. It was my face, my real face, from my webcam. Grainy, distorted, in grayscale. But it was me, sitting at my desk, wearing this headset. I looked at my webcam. The light was off. It had been off the whole time. How does a game file generated 5 years ago contain a picture of me from right now? Time is broken here. The causality of the file system is looping. I went back to the game. The hallway was gone. I was back in my first house, the library. It was on fire. Blue fire. Soul fire. The books were burning. I tried to put it out. I hit the fire. It didn't extinguish. The fire spread to me. I burned. The hearts dropped. 3, 2, 1. I died. The death screen appeared. You died. Score. And E0. Respawn. Title screen. I clicked respawn. The button clicked. Nothing happened. I clicked it again. The text changed. Respawn became resist. I clicked resist. Resist became refuse. I clicked refuse. Refuse became wake up. I clicked wake up. The game closed. My monitor went black. My room was dark. But in the reflection of the monitor, I saw him, standing behind me, in the room. I spun around. There was no one there. Just the coat rack. Just the shadow. But on my second monitor, the one displaying my desktop, a new file had appeared. Thank you for playing. X'd. I didn't open it. I deleted it. I emptied the recycle bin. I shut down the PC. It has been 3 days since the crash. I haven't launched Minecraft, but I see the glitches in real life now. Peripheral vision anomalies. I look at a tree outside my window, and for a split second, the leaves look like they are missing. I walk down a hallway at work, and the lighting feels like the smooth lighting engine has been turned off. Flat, harsh shadows. I hear the cave sounds and the hum of the refrigerator. I suspect that the peaceful mode was never about the game difficulty. It was a test environment, a clean slate to test the AI's ability to invade the user's perception. Herobrine isn't a ghost. He is a tulpa, a thought form generated by the collective anxiety of millions of players staring into the fog. And by playing on peaceful, by removing the other distractions, I gave him the bandwidth to manifest fully. I am writing this report to warn you. If you play peaceful mode, do not build large structures. Do not mine in straight lines. Do not look at the fog for too long. And if you see a 2x2 tunnel that you didn't dig, do not enter it. Disconnect. Delete the world. Burn the drive. The code is not inert. It is alive. And it is hungry. I logged out. I am done. But I know that the world file is still on my drive. And I know that even when the computer is off, the simulation continues. He is still building. He is still mining. He is waiting for me to come back. And the terrifying part is, I want to go back. I need to see what he builds next.